on hardware, on infra, I would now not try to compete with companies who did a pretty good job, predominantly in the United States or China. The AI race is not decided yet on the software layer. I mean, there will be, there's so much demand now. The chips are there. Yeah. There is also not a lack of data centers. Sovereignty is, for me, an artificial discussion here. What the race is not decided is who now develops the best AI use cases for our life science industry here in Europe? Who develops the best AI use cases for logistics, for manufacturing? This is now starting, because now what happened is the innovation on the infra layer, on the LLM layer. But now, finally, you can actually now develop also new innovation on the software, on the AI layer. And this is where it also matters most for Europe.
To be clear, because Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, of course, was in Europe a few weeks ago, doing a tour of Europe and making the case that Europe needs infrastructure, needs to build data centers and needs to fill them with chips. And if we don't have that component, we're not going to be in this race. You say that's not where the priority, that's not where the focus should be for Europe.
Look, the point is you need to come from both sides. Yeah, I mean, you need chips and data centers when someone is consuming it. But there is not the same demand for these chips in Europe like in the United States, where you have a lot of companies who need chips for training their large language modules, etc. Here, I mean, of course, when you now apply AI, develop software, develop new AI use cases, of course, there will be at a certain point also a higher demand for chips and for data centers. But now just focusing on the infra layer, on building data centers, I would predict there is for sure not so much demand right now. So you need to come also from the demand layer, from the top, from the software, from the AI layer, where again the race is not decided yet. And then of course what that drives is then finally more demand for chips, but in that order, not necessarily just building data centers for the sake of building data centers.
Is the EU AI Act, is it a hindrance to our development of this technology or a catalyst? How do you see the regulatory environment when it comes to AI?
I mean, when I'm sometimes talking in Brussels or in other councils in Europe, the first topic is always regulation, and I wonder sometimes, can we maybe first talk about competitiveness and opportunities and how we use now AI to make our industries more competitive? And because then, when you are leading there, then you can ask also the question how to regulate. I mean, honestly, I don't see in Europe now so many AI use cases who need now deep regulation so far. Now, regulation, I'm not against it. The problem with regulation and with the AI Act is, I would say Brussels come in with the absolutely right intent. They say, what, this technology needs to be regulated. I'm not against that, as long as you're regulating, business outcomes, and you also ensure there is a fair competition. I'm absolutely in for that. The problem here in Europe is they're having all the right strategic intent, but then they are putting this in place. But the member states, they just keep what they have, and then you're just adding another layer. Because then you have AI policies all over the place, and then they're overlapping, and the one data protection officer says that, the other says that. It's like going to 5 doctors and they tell you 5 times a different thing. And now you imagine you are a startup and you want to scale your technology, and in every country you are going in Europe, you hear a different story on how to adhere to any kind of AI Act. So Europe needs one framework, and not 20 different with 100 different interpretations of that. And that is what we are having.
That's what we have now. So scaling is not going to happen in that environment.
No, for sure not.
Are we overly dependent on US technology? Is it realistic to think that we can have sovereign European technology?
Look, I mean, here we have a data center, an SAP data center. It's a data center here in Germany. We run it. So when a customer comes to us and says, Christian, I want to have a European cloud only managed by SAP, you have it. That is a form of sovereignty. Now, what every European infrastructure will have, there are certain hardware components which come from the US, a server, etc. Now, is this a big problem? Not at all. I mean, this is hardware. Yeah, we put it into our data center. Because sometimes you're saying, oh, there could be a US technology in there or China technology, but at a certain point, one component will come from a different part of the world. But that is the wrong definition of sovereignty. The sovereignty means for me, where is your data going to be located? Who has access to your data? It's a network question. It's then, of course, also, do you want to have an encryption of your data? We do it today. So we have all kinds of forms of sovereignty.
Going back to your point about data centers,
Yes.
I mean, the hyperscalers in the US,
Yeah.
the argument being that if we are building on the application layer, if we're building industrial AI,
Yeah.
that we will be dependent on US hyperscalers if we don't build the data centers here. We have enough data centers here right
Yeah.
now. You don't think that should be the priority?
No,
You
it's not a
don't
problem.
think we should be spending on data centers?
It's not a problem. I mean, the customers have choice. Yeah? They, of course, choose the US hyperscaler, and we work with the US hyperscalers as a partners because they are not only providing an infrastructure layer. I mean, there's an automation layer. It's also about resiliency. I mean, when you shift your most mission-critical data to the cloud, every CIO needs, the best SLA on system reliability and so on. And there, the US hyperscalers are doing a good job. Are we dependent on them? No, we can shift the workloads to our own data center if customers want to do that.